Imagine this. You break your wrist. It hurts, sure. You get a cast, and in a few weeks, you're pretty much back to normal. But what if the pain didn't stop? What if it got worse, spreading, changing, until your own hand felt like it was on fire, like it didn't even belong to you anymore? Well, that is the baffling reality of complex regional pain syndrome, or CRPS. In this explainer, we're going to play detective and investigate how a simple injury can spiral into one of medicine's most complex puzzles. So, the absolute core of what defines CRPS is right here. The pain is completely, utterly disproportionate to whatever started it. We're talking about the pain from a minor sprain not just sticking around, but cranking itself up to an 11, becoming this debilitating chronic agony that can go on for years. It's like your body's normal alarm system just breaks and forgets how to turn off. And this is the central mystery we're trying to solve. How does a straightforward, everyday injury escalate into something so severe and so complex? Think of it like a medical whodunit. We've got the scene of the crime, the injury. But to figure out what happened, we need to look at the evidence and identify the culprits. Okay, so our investigation starts with the pain itself, because this pain is profoundly strange. It just doesn't follow the normal rules of healing. And right there, that's our first major clue. First things first, let's get the lay of the land. CRPS isn't one size fits all. It has two main flavors, if you will. Type 1 is the most common, making up about 90% of cases. It pops up after an injury, where, weirdly, there was no obvious damage to a major nerve. Then you have type 2, which used to be called causalgia. This one happens after a clear, known nerve injury. But here's the kicker. For both types, the result is the same, a cascade of symptoms that goes way, way beyond the initial problem. So our investigation takes us straight to our prime suspect, the body's own nervous system. You know, the very system that's designed to protect us with pain signals seems to turn traitor. It starts attacking the very body it's supposed to be looking out for. And here's where it all goes wrong. So normally, an injury sends a quick, temporary ouch signal to your brain. It's like a text message saying, hey, problem down here. But in CRPS, that signal becomes a deafening, non-stop siren that never, ever shuts off. This process has a name. It's called sensitization. The nerves basically get retrained to overreact, and this is where the problem really starts to spiral out of control. This is the vicious cycle that gets that runaway pain train going. So first, the injury makes the local nerves, the ones out in your arm or leg, super reactive. That's peripheral sensitization. Then, that constant screaming of pain signals travels up to the main command center, your brain and spinal cord, and they get sensitized too. That's central sensitization. Now, here's the really scary part. The brain literally starts to rewire itself. The mental map it has of your arm can actually shrink and get distorted. And once that happens, this rewired brain acts like a giant amplifier, turning up the volume on the pain signals and creating a loop that just feeds itself. So let's just pause on that for a second. This means what started out as a problem in a hand or a foot has now morphed into a disease of the brain and spinal cords themselves. The command center has been compromised. We're not talking about a malfunctioning limb anymore. We're talking about a full-blown systemic neurological disorder. But the plot thickens because the nervous system wasn't acting alone. Our investigation points to a second major suspect, the immune system. It looks like the body's own defense force goes from protector to a really powerful aggressor. I mean, just think about the visible signs of CRPS, especially in those early stages. The limb is swollen, it's red, it's hot to the touch. What does that sound like? Yep. Classic textbook inflammation. This is a huge clue that the immune system is deeply involved, flooding the area with its agents long after they should have packed up and gone home. And when we look closer, we find the members of this inflammatory army. In CRPS, the body is just swamped with these pro-inflammatory molecules, things with catchy names like TNF-alpha and interleukins. You don't have to remember the names. Just think of them as tiny little soldiers that are not only causing the swelling and heat you can see, but they're also directly irritating those nerve endings, basically pouring gasoline on the fire of that pain loop we just talked about. So all of this, it leads to a really big question, a provocative one. If the immune system is this involved, does that mean CRPS is an autoimmune disease? Is the body literally launching an attack on itself? And here's where our investigation gets, well, it gets complicated. The evidence is conflicting. On the one hand, you have researchers finding what are called autoantibodies. These are antibodies that attack the body's own cells in some people with CRPS, and some patients do get better with immune-based therapies. But on the other hand, those treatment results are all over the place, and some experts argue it's not really autoimmune, but more of a functional neurologic disorder, where the inflammation is a byproduct, not the cause. So the jury is definitely still out on this one. Okay, so we've got our two main suspects, a traitorous nervous system and an overzealous immune system, but they're not working alone. In any good conspiracy, you've got accomplices, other body systems that get dragged into this thing, creating this massive cascade of chaos. One of the most telling pieces of evidence is the dramatic change in the skin. In the early hot phase, the blood vessels get wide open. That's called vasodilation, making the skin warm and red. But as the condition goes on, it often flips into a cold phase. Now the blood vessels clamp down tight, vasoconstriction, leaving the skin cold, pale, or even kind of bluish. This shows a profound breakdown in the vascular system, which has lost its ability to properly control blood flow. You know, this brings up a huge question. Why doesn't everyone who breaks their wrist get CRPS? The answer seems to be hiding in our genes. Research is pointing more and more to a genetic predisposition. It looks like some people have specific genetic markers, especially ones tied to how the immune system behaves, that just make them more vulnerable. This doesn't mean CRPS is inherited like eye color, but it does mean a person's genetic makeup can sort of prime their body to overreact to an injury. And finally, we have to talk about our last accomplice, psychological stress. Now let's be super clear about this. Stress does not cause CRPS, but the science shows it creates this awful feedback loop. The body's chemical response to stress can actually worsen inflammation and pain sensitivity. And at the same time, living with severe nonstop pain is itself a massive source of stress. It's a cruel self-reinforcing cycle. So, we've examined all the evidence. We've looked at all the suspects. What's the verdict? Well, the solution to our puzzle isn't a single culprit. It's much more complex. It's a conspiracy. The truth about CRPS is that it's a perfect storm. It's a conspiracy of factors working together. Yeah, it starts with an injury, but that's just the trigger. In someone who might be genetically predisposed, that one trigger unleashes total chaos. It sets off a haywire nervous system, it launches an overzealous immune attack, and that in turn disrupts the blood vessels. All these things feed into each other, creating this complex, interlocking puzzle of pure dysfunction. So if there is one thing, just one thing, you take away from all this, let it be this. CRPS is so much more than just pain. It is a profound, multi-system failure. It's the nervous, immune, and vascular systems all malfunctioning together in this devastating cascade. And understanding that complexity, really getting it, is the first step toward empathy and, we hope, toward better treatments. Which leaves us with a final, forward-looking question. Now that we understand CRPS not as a single problem, but as this intricate, tangled web of malfunctions, can our researchers and doctors find a way to gently, precisely untangle that web for every single person who suffers from it? That remains the challenge, and that remains the hope.